Hey everyone, I wanted to make a review of a book that I just finished reading a few days ago. The title is Journey to the Dark Goddess: How to Return to Your Soul by Jane Meredith. I have a Kindle version, so I can't show you the paper, the paper book. So yeah, I would like to talk about this book because I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. And I found it actually helpful. It's a very practical book that deals with the dark goddess, the archetype of the dark goddess, and the practical aspect of working with her, especially the descent into the underworld, where the way Jane puts it in her book is kind of like an equivalent of shadow work, you could say, or just dealing with crises or difficult moments in your life. So the book, how it's set up, let me just, it's kind of divided into 4 parts. The first part is preparing for descent, and this part I think I had the most problems with when I started reading, because I don't agree, for example, with her views on shadow work, because her argument was kind of that, working with the dark goddess is just surrendering to the darkness and actually sitting in the darkness, while shadow work, its point is to bring something from the shadows to the light, so it's more focused on the light aspect, which I don't agree with, because yeah, I think it's very similar to how she set up her journey, basically, with the dark goddess. So first we have the descent, preparing for the descent, and then what she does in this part, first of all, she speaks about her story and how she became interested in this kind of work, and how you personally can prepare for descending instead of kind of being forced by circumstances to go into crisis. So I think I agree with that a lot. I think it's very beneficial to prepare yourself for the dark times and kind of give yourself tools in advance to be able to deal with the kind of shit that you have to deal with when you're really at the lowest of bottoms in your life. So she gives you this idea that you should basically prepare a map of a descent for yourself to be able to follow it or use it as a guide once you kind of go down there, because when you are in crisis, when you are in despair, when you are in deep depression, you don't always see reality as clearly as you might see it in, when you're not in the underworld. Let's just stick to that. So she gives you a few practical tools, and like each one of those parts in the book has a few rituals, some like exercises, prompts you can do. So I kind of started with that. This is my shadow work journal, by the way. I only started the first 2 exercises, which I think is really neat. I'm not gonna like show you details, but the first thing is basically you writing down all your all your previous descents into the underworld. And what she means by that are basically moments in your life when you were in crisis and you were going through tough shit for a longer period of time. So the way it's set up is the underworld, and then there you write about the moment in your life when that happened and what it was about, kind of what triggered maybe the crisis, or what was the main area of focus, I guess. Then the timing, which is how old you were when that happened, and you write down how long it took to kind of get out of that. Then the issues, where you write the main problems that you had to deal with when you were there in the underworld, and then the changes, which is what changed in your life around you and within you after you were kind of done with the descent or with the crises. So I did that, and she kind of prompts you also to look at the patterns, maybe, because sometimes when you are in a crisis, like let's say third time in a row within 5 years, you might notice that there are some topics that re-emerge, that are repeated, some stuff that you weren't maybe able to deal with or integrate the first time around. So I think that's really helpful. And then the next one that I did was kind of in preparing yourself for the descent already, like almost the last step before you actually do the descent. And that was creating this table. I didn't finish it, I only did the first part, kind of, where you write down all the positive events in your life that just come to mind as soon as you try to come up with something. Sorry. And then the difficult events, the most dark shit that happened to you. And then what's important is the acceptance of each of those aspects, each of those events that you listed. So you kind of have this table of reference almost when you descend to look at all the shit that was good in your life, that you appreciate in your life, to kind of help you to keep going. As well as it kind of, with the difficult events, it kind of allows you to accept that they actually happened to you, and so that then you kind of have an easier way to maybe allow yourself to look at them or admit that they happened, and thus maybe deal with them easier or more effectively. So those are the two that I started doing, but yeah, anyway, I'm not gonna like mention all the exercises and rituals because that would take ages, and this is just a quick review. At least that's what I wanted. So anyway, in her book, Jane focuses on 3 goddesses, 3 myths, and that's the descent of Inanna to Ereshkigal into the underworld, the myth of Persephone, and the myth of Psyche and Eros. So those are the 3 primary ones that she works with, and throughout the book she kind of analyzes the myths and tries to tell you how you can utilize the stories in those myths to help you in your own descent. So yeah, the first part was preparing for the descent. Then we have part 2, which is descending into the underworld. And again, she tells you about how it looked like in the mythos. She also provides you with her own story, how she did that over the years, what she used, because her story kind of began when she decided to take some kind of retreat where a group of women physically recreates the descent of Inanna over the course of a few days. So that's how she kind of got started on this journey, and then so she provides you the context of that, but also she tells you about the times that she did her own descents and how to do it, and also how not to do it, what she did wrong in the past, what didn't work out, where you can do mistakes based on kind of her experience. She warns you of some things that you can fuck up on the way. So I found that really, really helpful and really practical. So in the descending, she analyzes the part of the myth where the goddess, or Psyche was a mortal, actually descends into the underworld, what happens there, what are the common symbols or archetypes that repeat themselves in all those myths, and what that can possibly mean for us. She also gives you some exercises again, and the ritual of the descent itself, which follows the Inanna's descent into the underworld, which is based on going through those 7 gates. I think it was 7 gates, and on each of the gates Inanna has to give up one of her powers that she acquired before she decided to descend. And the way Jane kind of presents it for us is that on each gate you have to choose one thing that from your life that you would like to shed, or maybe she used the word detachment, but I don't like it personally. It just doesn't bring good connotations for me personally. But the point is kind of to be aware and acknowledge on each of those gates that you will still exist if this thing or this person or this relationship or whatever is not present in your life. So you shed kind of, oh yeah, that's kind of the word that I was looking for. You shed, let's say, your most important relationships, your job, your identity, some of your traits perhaps, even children. So yeah, that's some deep shit. And let me tell you, when I started reading the book, and I think she at first presented those ideas kind of aggressively for my taste. Maybe that's just my projection, I don't know, but that's how I kind of took them. And there was a lot of resistance in me to some of the, I guess, the way she worded some things. But I think that was kind of necessary to prepare you for the next steps of the journey, because the longer you read the book, the more balanced her view is and the way she presents things. So I think as a reader, at the beginning you kind of need that shock, that shake-up, to even be able to realize that perhaps you do need this journey, that it could help you with your future crises, or just right now, if you do it, like if you descend instead of waiting for it to happen anyway, if you know what I mean. So yeah. And so she gives you the ritual of the descent based on Inanna's descent into the underworld. Then the part 3 is what actually happens in the underworld. In the mythos of Inanna, she stays there for 3 days, 3 nights, whatever. And Jane kind of encourages you to stay in the underworld for however long you want, basically. It can be 3 days as in the mythos, or you can stay there for a week, for a month, however long it takes for you to deal with the stuff that you want to deal with. Yeah. What's next? So yeah, again, she kind of tells you her own experience with being there, and perhaps why it's not a good idea to rush it and to try to get out of there as soon as possible. And in her journey, she did the descent and then within a few hours tried to do the ascent back. And actually she did everything backwards, and she didn't even realize it until she checked her journals a few months later, which is also she kind of really stresses the point that you should document your journey, write about it, paint about it, dance about it, just document it in any way that you find to be comfortable and beneficial for you personally, just to be able to reference it back when you're maybe in a less dramatic state of mind, so that you can see how it went, if you missed anything, and perhaps to give you clues for future descents. So yeah. And then the part 4 is coming up from the underworld, and she tells you how that goes in the myth of Inanna, how that goes in the myth of Persephone, and in the myth of Psyche. And then she tells you how she went through her own ascent, how it can potentially go for you, and she gives you again the rituals and tools to kind of do that. And that's basically how the book is set up. I really like her approach, and this book, the longer I read it, it kind of grew on me more and more. So yeah, I really loved it. I think it's... I never read anything like this before, so I don't know if there's books about working with the Dark Goddess that are this detailed, that really give you the juicy details on what you can encounter when you work with this kind of energy. It also helps you understand it from the psychological point of view, the symbolism behind it, what it actually means for your psyche. It's basically a journey to integration of not only your, I think mainly your shadow, honestly, but not only that. It's I think it's deeper than that, because yeah, the archetype of the Dark Goddess, I think it's very vast, and for each one of us it means something different, but you could boil it down to I guess the untamed feminine part of yourself, and that is not shadow, that is something else. So yeah, I really love this book. I really recommend it. Even if you don't want to try this kind of work, just reading about it puts a lot of things in perspective, and perhaps gives you some cool tools to deal with difficult moments in your life. Fuck, I can't speak today for some reason. So yeah, I highly recommend it, and its price on Kindle is like really surprisingly cheap. I think she should like take more money for this stuff because it's awesome. I really think she put a lot of legit work into this book, and you can tell that it's not fake. It's a very real story, and it is backed up by years of experience, and it is advanced. So I really appreciate that, because you don't come by books like this very often, at least I don't. So yeah, I loved it. So yeah, this is my review, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, because I don't know if this counts as a book review really. So if you would like to check it out, let me know. I would be really interested to like maybe compare notes with some other people who read this book and do the work, because currently I'm at the first stage preparing for the descent, but I actually intend to do the work. I'm not sure how long it's gonna take me to get to the point where I'm actually ready and do this stuff, and then of course the ascent. Seriously, it can take years, I think, if you wanted to. So yeah. Anyway, that's my review. And just one more thing, guys. I'm gonna link a video by Luna Poplar in my description thingy below, because she just posted a fucking great video about her ideas on reading tarot for others, and she has such a great creative idea on how she basically wants to approach it for herself and her clients. I would really love it if you guys checked that video out and gave her some feedback, because I think it's really great. So anyway, thanks for watching, and hopefully see you guys soon. Bye bye.